It seems to be working okay now. So, hi everyone, it's Nicola again from the Puppy Nanny. The internet seems to be being a bit slow, slower than normal today, so it just kicked me off before. So hopefully it'll stay on this time, and I'll be able to give you some useful information. So we are on, I was working it out before, we are on kind of video 5 of the Facebook Live videos that I've done so far. So the first one was specifically to do with sort of self-isolation, how to keep our puppies and our adult dogs happy and entertained while you're stuck at home. The second one was about crate training, and I added in about making sure that we're preventing any issues with separation anxiety. So even if our dogs are normally fine with us going out and about because we're with them so much, this could cause problems in the future, basically. So we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen. And then we talked about socialisation. So there was quite a big video on the third video about how we can make sure we're still socialising our puppies even when we're not allowed to get them out and about as much as we normally would. So there was quite a lot there. And then on Friday, we talked about teething and biting and mouthing. And then due to popular demand, today I've decided to cover toilet training because I've been speaking to some clients about toilet training today, and a couple of friends have also mentioned about wanting to work on toilet training as well. So I thought we'll get started with that. So I'll talk about toilet training sort of as if it's brand new, as if you've not started doing anything at all yet, and then hopefully that'll cover everybody. As usual, if you've got any questions, just you can just write a comment in the box and then I can answer it, or I'll check if there's anything that I've missed out at the end. Okay, so toilet training. It really varies from puppy to puppy. Often it will depend on what the breeders have done as well. So some breeders will actually start early puppy training where they're getting mats out and they're getting them to toilet onto mats, or they're trying to get them to toilet in a different area. So that can be quite helpful. If they don't do that and they're just toileting all over the place, sometimes that will slow them down a little bit. And as well, it depends where they're kept. So if they're kept in a kennelled area where they just toilet where they sleep, it's going to be harder to toilet train them than if they're kept in an area where they've got one area for sleeping in and then another area for toileting in as well. So they'll all vary. When they first come home, their bladders are tiny, so they're going to need to go out quite often. And rather than sort of waiting, it's just going to be a case to start off with of getting them out all the time, taking them outside into the garden all the time. I wouldn't recommend, if you can avoid it, I wouldn't recommend using puppy training pads. Puppy training pads tend to slow down the toilet training a little bit, just because you're having to give yourself twice as much work. So you're training them to go onto the pad, first of all, and rewarding them for that. And then once they've got the hang of that, you're then training them to go outside instead of going on the pad. So you're almost giving yourself twice as much work to do. What I normally find as well is for owners that do training onto the pad, it's quite hard to move them off the pad to outside because they get comfortable doing that. And even if you take the pad away or move the pad closer to the door, often they'll just go back to the place where the pad was first of all. So it's the idea behind it of teaching them to go on the mat or the pad and then moving it closer to the outside and eventually moving it outside is great in theory. But for me, I think, especially seeing as we're at home a lot at the moment, we may as well just get them going straight outside and miss out the pad thing, because it just saves your job, and it saves you having to buy loads of pads as well. The other main problem with pads is that they end up being toys as well, and they just end up getting ripped up and thrown around and moved around the room and chewed up as well. So once that happens, they're no good as a pad anyway, because if you leave your puppy alone with one, they're just going to rip it up and mess it up, and then they're not going to toilet on it anyway. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend using a pad unless you have to. Very occasionally I'll work with a client where we'll go back to using a pad if we're struggling, but if you can get away without using it, I wouldn't bother. And that goes the same for like newspapers or anything like that. If you've got some outside space, even if it's only a small outside space, I would work on getting them to go out there first of all. So what we're going to do is we're going to be taking them out little and often. So it might be as much as every half an hour to start off with. And you're going to take them to wherever it is that you want them to go to the toilet. So it might be you've got a bit of a yard or a bit of garden at the front. It might be there's a particular space in the garden that you want them to go to the toilet in. It's wherever you want them to go. And what I normally suggest for young puppies is that you take them out on lead, because sometimes if you take them out off lead, they'll get distracted by a leaf blowing past or a bird flying overhead, and they'll forget that they needed the toilet, and they won't remember until they come back into the house again. So they need to learn that they have to go when they're going into the garden. A big part of going in the garden is that they have to go to the toilet. So if you keep them on the lead whilst they're out there and let them, follow them around, let them have a sniff around, let them kind of choose a good place where they want to go to the toilet, but not letting them run around and play or find toys or pick sticks and leaves up and things like that, because it's not playtime, it's toilet time. That's what we want them to think. Obviously, you can go in the garden at other times when they don't need the toilet and play with them, but we need to make sure that they're toileting there as well. Before you go out with them, you need to make sure that you've got some treats ready to go. So you can just use their dry kibble for this, just some little bits of biscuits. And what I want you to do is I want you to go outside with them. Obviously, you're with them because they've got the lead on, and you're going to wait with them to go to the toilet. And you might need to wait for sort of 15, 20 minutes to start off with while they realise what it is that they're supposed to be doing. And then if and when they do go to the toilet, we're rewarding them straight away with a treat. So as soon as they've weed or pooed, you're going to use lots of verbal praise, good girl, good boy, well done, that sort of thing, and then feed them a treat. It's important that we reward them straight after them going to the toilet, because if we don't do that, they won't make the association between the two things. They won't realise that the treat that they're getting is for going to the toilet. So we need them to make that connection between those two things. Similarly, if you kind of let them go out into the garden on their own, and then when they come back in, you reward them, they're not going to associate that reward with going to the toilet. They'll associate the reward with coming back to you. So it needs to happen whilst they're actually immediately after they've done their wee or they've done their poo. So we're consistently going to make sure that we reward any toileting that they do outside every single time. And we need to be really consistent, because they need to realise the difference between toileting outside and inside. And the difference is that when they go outside, they get a reward, and when they go inside, they don't get that reward. So they miss out on a reward if they go to the toilet inside. And what I like to do when they're very small is keep a record of what sort of times they're going. So this works best if you're feeding them at the same sort of time each day. So if they're getting their regular meals at set times, then what should happen is they should be toileting at regular times as well. And there will be a little bit of a pattern there. So with some puppies, they'll need to go to the toilet like straight away after they've eaten. It'll move through really quickly. For other puppies, it's an hour after they've eaten, or it might be specific times of day. That's when they go. But by writing it down, we'll start to see a little bit of a pattern, and then we can keep an eye on that. So in a few days' time, you'll get to the point where you'll think, well, I know they don't need to go at 11, but I must get them outside at 11:30 because they'll definitely need a poo then. So that's why it's well worth writing it down, because otherwise you will just be watching them all the time. And it's good to know, okay, well, they've been for the toilet now and they don't normally go again for another hour. And then you can then relax a little bit and you don't have to keep taking them out all of the time when they've just been. So yeah, I would start to write it down. Write down whether it's wees or poos as well, because obviously they're going to be weeing more than they're going to be pooing. So keep a record of that. If you've been stood in the garden with them for like 15... We're back. Sorry. As I said at the start, I think a few of you might have missed it. The wireless, the internet connection's being really annoying and it keeps cutting me out. So there's going to be some pauses. I'm sorry about that. Someone remind me what I was just saying. Oh, yes. So if you've taken them out and you've been stood out there for 15, 20 minutes, they've not been for a wee for like an hour, so you know that they need to go, or a poo, and you've been stood there for ages and they've still not gone, bring them back in, but you're going to have to really closely supervise them, because that's the time when it's most likely that they're going to go inside. They've been outside where it was maybe a little bit colder, they've come back inside, they're nice and warm, and they think, oh, actually, I remember I needed the toilet now, and that's when they're going to do it. So what you can do is make sure you're keeping a really close eye on them, or somebody is keeping a close eye on them. And by keeping a close eye on them, I mean literally following them around, watching them, waiting for them to do that poo or that wee. You can keep them on lead. So you could keep them on lead inside so that they stay close to you. Or if you're doing crate training, like we talked a few days ago about, you can pop them in their crate as well. So we're just trying to minimise them kind of going off to a corner and doing a wee, or finding somewhere indoors that's going to be their toilet spot. And then if we're keeping a close eye on them, as soon as they start to look at all like they're about to squat, or even if they start squatting and doing a wee, what we're going to do then is we're going to pick them up, and we're going to take them outside straight away. So even if they're midway through the wee, if you pick them up, generally they'll stop weeing, which is good because then you don't get covered in wee. And then you can take them outside. And then even if they just finish their wee outside, you can reward them for doing that. So as much as possible, we need to be getting them outside for as many wees as possible and as many poos as possible. If they do have accidents inside, that's going to happen. That is life. Especially when they're tiny puppies, that they're going to have accidents inside. We're going to have to get used to that. Make sure that you've got a really good stock of cloths or kitchen roll that you can be using, and you need a pet specific cleaner. So if you use bleach or all-purpose cleaner or Flash or something like that, as far as we're concerned, it'll be nice and clean, but they will still be able to smell their scent underneath it. And puppies and dogs like to go to the toilet where they can smell that they've been before. So they'll actively seek out places where it smells like they've been to the toilet before to go again. So often if you are having problems with toilet training inside, you'll notice that they go back to the same place, a particular corner of the room or behind a chair or under a table or something like that. And it's because it's familiar and they're still able to smell their scent there. So what we actually need is we need a pet-specific cleaner, and the pet-specific cleaners have got enzymes in that break down that scent. And normally what you do with them is you put the cleaner on, you leave it to soak for a bit. So you leave it to soak for sort of 15, 20 minutes or something like that. And while it's soaking, it's going to break down all of those scents, and then you can just wipe it back up afterwards. So we just want to try and make sure that there aren't any particular areas that they're really highly scenting. Especially if you've got carpet. If you've got a hard floor, this isn't quite so difficult, but if you've got carpet, if they keep toileting in the same place, in the same area all the time, it will be very hard to get that scent out of the carpet. And I've had clients where they've had to completely replace their carpets because the puppy just associated it with the toilet, and it had been weed on so many times that the smell was so strong it was going to be impossible to get out of. If you were able to, and you have got carpeted areas, the best thing to do is actually not allow your puppy access to any carpeted areas while you're toilet training. So if you've got hard floor, say in the kitchen, that's a good place to keep them whilst you're getting the hang of the toilet training, because obviously the floor is going to be much easier to clean, and it's going to be less likely for that scent to stick around and stain as well. So keeping them in a room where you've got a hard surface can be really helpful for working on your toilet training. If they do have an accident, there's no point telling them off or shouting at them or smacking their noses or rubbing their noses in it or anything like that. It's an accident. They're not doing it on purpose. They're doing it because they needed a wee and they just went wherever was available for them at that time. The problem with telling them off is what they will do is they won't, if we tell them off for toileting inside, for weeing or pooing inside, instead of them thinking, right, I won't do that again, they'll just learn to do it either when you're not looking, or they'll go somewhere and hide to do it so that you don't see them doing it. So they won't think, oh, I've been told off for toileting, I won't go to the toilet inside again. They'll think, I've been told off for toileting, I won't let them see me doing it again. So they'll just try and avoid being caught. The other thing which can happen as well, which is really, really disgusting, is if we keep telling them off, especially if they have a poo inside, what they'll sometimes do is they'll start, if they've pooed inside, they'll start eating their poo to hide it from you. So because they know that they can't kind of move it or anything like that, the best way for them to hide it will be for them to eat it, which is disgusting. And we don't want them to start doing that. So they're the sort of the pitfalls to telling them off for going to the toilet in the house. With the poo eating, if they start doing it inside, then chances are they might start doing it outside as well, and then you may end up with it being an ongoing problem as they get older. They might just carry on doing it. It's something that they learn from their mothers, so their mothers will tidy up their area by eating the poo, and so they see their mothers doing it, and if we give them the opportunity to do it at home when they're in their new home with us, then potentially they can carry on doing it. So we don't really want to give them any reason to carry on doing that. So lots and lots of rewards for them when they're going outside in the right place, and just cleaning it up when they go inside. One thing that can sometimes help is a little bit of scent swapping. So if they've been for a wee inside, wipe it up with some kitchen roll, and then you can put that in the garden or a cloth or something like that. So you're transferring the scent, you're moving the scent of the urine to outside. And similarly, if they do a poo, pick it up and pop it outside in the area where you want them to do their poo, so that when they do go out into the garden and they're sniffing around looking for somewhere to go to the toilet, they can smell where they've been before, they can see the poos that they've done before, and that will just help them settle into that particular area. And it's quite normal then for them to have like a favourite area in the garden that they want to go to the toilet in. So that's quite normal, and obviously if that happens, you want to let them have access to that area. It's quite normal as well for puppies not to want to toilet on walks, especially when they're quite young. So even if you're out with them for quite a long period of time, puppies will often wait until they get home to go to the toilet, and it's that scent thing again. They want to go where it smells familiar, so they want to go in the house or in the garden where they can smell where they've been before, they can smell where their family's been. So when they're out on a walk, it's just going to smell of lots of other things, and it'll also smell of lots of different dogs as well. And they won't want to go to the toilet where lots of other dogs have been to the toilet, because it won't smell of them. And the other thing is that as soon as they start going to the toilet outside, they'll know that other dogs can smell where they've been as well. So they don't really want to let other dogs know that they're there whilst they're still quite young. This often changes around 6 months. So it's normally around the time when male dogs start cocking their legs and start marking their territory. They've got that little bit more confidence then, and they want everyone to know that they're there then, so they'll start going to the toilet outside then. But don't be surprised if you take them out for a walk, you get them into the house, and as soon as you get them into the house, they do a massive wee. It's a good idea to take them into the garden first to give them the opportunity to go for a wee when you get back from a walk, before you bring them into the house, so that you can make sure that they've emptied their bladder or emptied their bowels before they go back into the house. So that's quite common. Really, most puppies should be toilet trained, like fully dry, by the time they're 6 months or around that time. It might be a little bit later, so it might be 7 months. And for a lot of puppies, it'll be sooner as well. So some puppies get the hang of it really, really quickly, and by the time they're like 4 or 5 months old, they're pretty much dry all the time. But 6 months is kind of your that's what you're aiming for, really. For overnight toilet training, I would recommend using a crate. So, as I said, we did a video about crate training. I can't remember which day it was. It might have been, I think it was day 2. Yeah, so the second video that we did was about crate training. So if anyone's unsure about crate training or wants to know how to go about introducing their puppy to a crate, or what we're doing with it, then if you go back to that video, then I talk all about how to introduce a crate and how to make sure that our puppies like it. The reason that it can be helpful with toilet training is because most dogs don't want to sleep in the area that they've been toileting. So if you've got a crate and they're in that crate and they've got their bed area there, if they went to the toilet, if they went to the toilet, they're having to lie down to go to sleep right next to it, which they won't want to do. They'll want to go to the toilet somewhere and then move away from that to sleep. They don't want to sleep right next to where they've pooed or weed, or they certainly don't want to lie touching it or lie in it or anything like that. So by using a crate, what we're doing is we're just giving them an incentive to cross their legs for a little bit longer until we let them out of the crate. If you're doing crate training with them to start off with for toileting, we don't want to be leaving them in for any length of time. So you need to build it up gradually. So if you're using a crate overnight, say, you probably want to be giving them like a late toilet break, say at 11ish, but then you're going to need to set your alarm and get up every couple of hours after that to let them out to the toilet. So you're probably going to need to do 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 5 o'clock, and then up at 7 o'clock. It's not realistic to expect them to be able to hold it all night when they're 8 or 9 weeks old and they've just come from their mum's and a pen where they can go to the toilet whenever they want to. We've got to gradually build up that control in their bladders. So set an alarm. When you take them out to the toilet overnight, you need to keep it really kind of sort of matter of fact. You don't want it to be like a time when you're having loads of cuddles and fuss with them, or where you're getting toys out and playing, or you're doing any training. It just needs to be a toilet visit. So it just needs to be, you open the crate, you take them outside, you give them the opportunity to go to the toilet, and then obviously if they go to the toilet, you reward them, and then you bring them back in again. If they don't go to the toilet, you just bring them back in again and pop them back in their crate. So it needs to be really kind of quick and simple. As I say, I would start off doing that sort of every couple of hours to start off with. What we don't want is, we don't want to leave it so long that, say, back again. You don't want to leave it so long that it gets to sort of 3 or 4 in the morning and they're howling and crying because they need to go to the toilet. You want to get to them before they start making any noise, because we don't want to have our puppies getting distressed in the crate. So we need to get to them nice and early. And again, sort of similar to in the day, you should start to notice a pattern for when you're letting them out. So you might let them out at 1 and they go for a wee then, but then when you let them out at 3 o'clock, they don't actually need to go at all, and they could have waited till 5. And then you can start to drop your visits down during the night. So you can drop it down to maybe just twice a night, and then just once a night, and then just leaving them fully overnight. So you can do that over a period of days, maybe a couple of weeks or so, just building up the amount of time that they're okay going in the crate for and not needing the toilet. Anything else toilet training related? So we're not telling them off. We're rewarding them for going outside. We're getting them outside as much as possible. We're waiting outside with them for sort of 15-20 minutes until they've gone to the toilet. If they do go to the toilet inside, we're just tidying it up, and we're using a crate as well. So if you know that they need the toilet, or if you think you've not been for a while, you're probably due a wee or a poo now, keep them close so that you can keep an eye on them, or put them in their crate if you're not able to keep an eye on them for sort of half an hour, and then try taking them out again and just repeating it again. I think that's everything for toilet training. Right, I'm opening it for questions. Has anyone got any questions about toilet training? Any questions about toilet training? As I've said before on previous videos, if you think of anything sort of after the video's over, you can always add it as a comment, and then I can get back to you when I see it. Okay, that means everyone's doing okay with their toilet training, which is excellent. As I say, some puppies just tend to get it really quickly. Some puppies take a lot longer to get the hang of it. Joey was about 7 months old by the time he was like fully 100% toilet trained. And I remember sort of getting to about 6 months and thinking, yeah, we're sorted now, we're all right, he's toilet trained. And then we'd be sat there watching TV and he'd just like squat down and do a massive wee in the living room. And it probably only happened like once a week or once every couple of weeks, but it was just enough to, you know, really wind us up. Plus, when they're, 8 weeks old and they're doing a wee, it's a lot smaller than when they're 6 or 7 months old and they're doing a wee, when it's a big, massive wee instead. Yeah, okay, so I can't see any questions coming through. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I'm having a think about what I'm going to do for my talk, my live tomorrow. If there's anything that you think of, please put a message in, because I'm trying to look through the messages and then sort of tailor the talks to things that people are asking about. So if there's anything that you'd like to know about, let me know, and then I can talk about that. And if not, I will carry on kind of working through the normal things I talk about. So one question here. So Gemma's put, my puppy's nearly 12 weeks old and goes through the night without doing a wee. Does that sound right? That sounds amazing, Gemma. That's brilliant. Yeah, a lot of puppies are much quicker than that. Joey got through the night really, really quickly. He just didn't get the hang of it through the day. So yeah, that's really good. This is one of my cats. I've got two cats, Quasi and Mavis. This is Mavis, who's doing that lovely thing where she shows you her bum. So obviously she's feeling neglected because we're talking about dogs and not talking about her. Yes, move it. There we go. So yeah, that was Mavis, everyone. Yeah, daytime is harder. Daytime is definitely harder, but you've cracked the night, so that's a massive positive. And I generally say to people that get the nighttime sorted first and then focus on the days, because I think if you're getting a full night's sleep at night, that makes a massive difference. What's someone put here? He wheezes outside, but he won't poo outside. Okay, so try picking up your poos and putting them outside. I know it sounds disgusting, but when you're clearing up, take your poos outside and put them outside in the area where he's going for a wee already, so that he starts to realise that that's where he should be doing his poos. With poos as well, you should get a little bit more notice of them. So they do generally tend to take a little bit longer to kind of find a good spot for doing a poo. So you should have more of an indicator with a poo of whether they need a poo or not. So just watch them. It tends to be, Mavis is back again. It tends to be, with poos, it tends to be a lot of sniffing because they want to find the right place to go, and a lot of kind of circling round as well so they can get themselves into the right position. Some dogs make a right drama out of kind of finding the right place to poo. So just keep a close eye on them to see, on him, sorry, to see what little indicators he's giving off that he needs a poo, he's about to do a poo. And also the other thing I would do, Gemma, is I would time how long it is for him between eating and pooing, because then if you know that it takes an hour from breakfast for him to need a poo, you know that at such and such time he's going to need a poo, and you could just wait outside with him in the garden until he does one, even if it's sort of 20 minutes or half an hour. Wrap up. It's got a bit colder, hasn't it, now? So it's not quite as nice for being outside. But wrap up, have a flask of tea that you can get someone to pass you a flask of tea, and just wait them out until they eventually go. Because as soon as we can start rewarding them outside, the sooner they'll think, aha, I may as well wait till I go outside because that's what I'm getting rewarded for. Okay, right, I can't see any other questions. So I'm going to leave it there for today. I hope you're all having a lovely Sunday. We're going to do Sunday dinner, well, our version of Sunday dinner. And then we have promised Thomas a film. So we're going to watch, we're going to have Sunday dinner and a film. So that's our Sunday night plan. I hope you're all having a nice evening. As I say, I will be back on tomorrow. So if there's anything in particular that you want me to talk about, let me know. And if not, I'll carry on sort of working through all of my top puppy tips. Okay, have a lovely rest of Sunday, everyone. Bye.